community education. Specifically, I'm looking at hip hop culture and the aging of hip hop culture. I also intermix spirituality with that. And so, as a doctoral student, it's kind of hard. Sometimes people are like, hip hop, what do you mean hip hop? And so I guess I wanted to kind of start off with my background, where I'm from, and what kind of brought me into hip hop. So I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois. I moved here 2 years ago. If you know anything about East St. Louis, it's the currently is #1 murder capital. So I come from a rough place, very rough place. If you even look at the statistics, I shouldn't by any means probably be in a doctoral program, but I did make it out. Before I lived in East St. Louis, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona until I was 14 years old. And I found that when I moved to East St. Louis, hip hop it gave me a language to verbalize. It became my weapon of choice. It allowed me to be able to transcend a lot of lines that some people might have said, well, we don't like her because of this, or we don't like her because of that. But I began to write, and I began to speak. And so one piece that I talk about in my own poetry, I say, I write so man can see the light that ignites my soul. I spit your lyrics so they can hear it, let it manifest and take control. It is my goal to capture the misguided from the rapture of those who are spiritually blind, and so I spit the dope fist to snatch their primary focus, find and deliver their mind. And yo, God made hip hop, but the enemy tried to flip flop from jazz to hard rock, from grinding and mellow shock, from words spoken broken to words, spoken broken to words, spoken broken to spoken words. I will eliminate any rumors that you could have heard about. Christians on the mic junk like verbally they can't interrogate. Mentally they can't dominate. Forget that. Metaphorically I will devour any enemy, any hour I'll balance till I conquer. I love to feel the power, cause when I'm speaking freely, poetry is completing me. When I'm speaking freely, hip hop is completing me. When I'm speaking freely, poetry is completing me. And so in that, I always kind of go in and out of hip hop. I've noticed that Jay-Z has been like a huge staple in my development of like just watching his growth, coming up with one of the first albums, Reasonable Doubt. Just a lot of things that to see his transition. I'm 30, but I just remember watching some of his first videos and just seeing how at first I saw him as this like I really liked his wordplay at first. Right, the way that he was able to go in and out of different things and talk about some political things, talk about Stevie Wonder and just different people, and talk about the basis of hip hop being the foundation in his life, and just kind of the way in which he was talking about creating something out of nothing. So to me, hip hop, I talk about this in my work. It grew up, got a job, and went to college. And Jay-Z is because I'm looking at myself saying I am hip hop, right? So I grew up. I got a job, working at McDonald's or whatever. And then I was like, no, I'm going to college. And so now I'm here, getting a doctoral degree. But to me, Jay-Z and all of his brilliance, he was able to kind of speak to that in this book about the aging of hip hop. And so in this discussion, I want to talk about the soul and consciousness of hip hop. But through that, because I don't want to talk a lot, that's why I'm kind of rushing now, because I want everybody to kind of be able to speak. I want to talk about the aging of hip hop and how do you feel connected to hip hop? Do you have an interconnectedness with hip hop? Or what is hip hop to you, right? So once again, to me, hip hop, it gave me a voice, and I was in an oppressive place, right? East St. Louis, Illinois. It allowed me to vocalize. It allowed me to speak. It allowed something that was foreign. Sometimes people say it's bad. It allowed me to spiritualize that, right? This guy named Paulo Freire said that oppressed people have a way of spiritualizing the world, right? So I can spiritualize cooking in a pan. I can spiritualize anything because I can say, you know what? To me, when I came out of that oppressive state, this stuff spirituality is what guided me. I say faith is what guided me, but in that there's this interconnectedness, right? So I guess I want to kind of start the conversation with, I was going to start with a quote, but now I closed the book, I got to find it. But I guess for somebody to answer, speak to me about what is hip hop to you?
Can I ask a question? You were saying that, because I'm not up on hip hop, okay, at all, but you were saying it's oppressive or whatever, oppressive. Is there anything that you can, like if a happy, non-oppressed person or whatever can come out and do a happy hip hop song. Well, you know what I'm saying? That's not.
I guess what I'm saying is,
I don't know how to,
hip hop started in the 70s, specifically 77 in New York. Well, they say it started in New York, but I think that it was going on everywhere because it was right after civil rights and individuals were coming out of this oppressive state, right, of not having anything. So you have individuals in the boroughs of New York who had nothing, who started to create music because they weren't able to go into certain clubs and they weren't able to go to certain places. So now they're creating, they're taking their moms and daddies, records and they start spinning and making music and different things. So and so this notion of being able to create, out of using James Brown and, start twerking it and, making something out of it. So I say that individuals who were oppressed by systems, right? Individuals who were oppressed by crack cocaine or parents who were, doing things that, that weren't there at the home, right? Who didn't have money, right? So individuals who are oppressed by so many things, even today, you find that is a stream that kind of runs through hip hop. Individuals who say that I associate with hip hop, they're like, yo, well, I went through this at home and this allowed me to speak to that, right? And so, yeah, I wasn't saying that the hip hop is oppressive, although there's some themes.
Yeah, the themes.
There's some themes in that could oppress, but I feel like hip hop has allowed us to come above the oppression, right? And to write about it in such an eloquent way.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense to me, except when it's gotten to the point, not everybody, but some people in hip hop are using it to oppress.
Yeah.
At this point. And
Right.
so how did we come from that to this?
Or you want to jump in and
You can answer the question.
Well, I don't want to take up so much time talking, but because I wanted everybody to kind of speak about that. In the spirit of hip hop, we always say, we sample stuff, so everybody has a voice, and I'm not the only voice here. And to me, I'm learning from you guys, right? But misogyny, right? A lot of times, right? At times you got Jay-Z saying, I don't even curse, but saying, this be, whatever, right? And then, he has this brilliant song that he wrote called Glory. It's talking about, he's not even gonna call women bees anymore because now he has a daughter and, now he realizes that, that that's not a right thing to do. But then some people are like, well, wait a minute, you had a wife for 5 years, 10 or whatever, 5, 6 years, even whatever, 10 years, what, you was calling her that, So there is this visceral tension, but I feel like because we are so complex human beings, there's a visceral tension in rock and roll, right? There's a visceral tension in all types of music, and now you have this thing where they're saying that, Jay-Z and certain other authors are like connected to the Illuminati or whatever, and they begin to demonize the culture. But to me, black people have always been demonized. So it's whatever I do, I'm demonized right now. I do not agree with everything that Kanye or Jay says, or certain people. One moment, sister, because he was gonna go first. But I don't agree with everything. But I do have to say that this is their narrative, this is their story, right? And so when you try to silence the story of individuals, you are still oppressing them, right? So you're listening. He talks about in the book how, hey, I'm talking about, I'm talking about the drugs, but I also say where I come from and what is the reason why I got into drugs? What's the reason I began to hustle them, right? And so Jay-Z, he hustled rocks or whatever, right? But then to me, I had to hustle my mind so I can get where I'm at. And so hustling is not necessarily a bad thing. To me, hustling teaches you how to go out there and become a go-getter. So I don't know if I answer your question.
Kind of. But I guess I'm also thinking about the stuff, especially when we talk about the misogyny, that's the stuff that seems to get more airplay.
Yeah,
and that's not all of it. That's the stuff that seems to be put in the forefront. So that's why I think a lot of people have a very negative opinion of hip hop. I mean, I've heard people say, I would not listen to a rap song. Ever. There's nothing in the rap song. And I said, well, what about gospel rap? It's gospel rap. People just aren't even aware.
See, I listen a lot to gospel. I listen to a whole lot of gospel rap.
Yeah.
But I also listen to, so certain stuff I don't even want to put in, but I understand what you're saying.
But that means that people are buying it if that's what's getting put in the forefront. And I know there's a lot of white people buying it, but there's a lot of black people buying it too, and not even thinking about what's said.
I think at the end of the day, Cash that sells records, and that it's all about money. If this corporate guy says, you know, the hip hop kind of, I don't want to say it died, but it kind of went sour when corporate forces got into it. It lost its purity. You know, it was all about like, let's go on, like you said, on the corner and let's, you know, spit some rhyme. But now, like now you got McDonald's and you got this and you got that putting their hand in hip hop, and it's like, okay, well, what sells? Sex sells. So at the end of the day, she's gonna be in a video with booty shorts on, and kids are gonna request it. And if kids request it, it's like if people request it, it's supply and demand. That's it.
Right, but there's a point where if Jay-Z spits on, I mean, just spits, I'm talking about lyrics, spits on a record, it's gonna sell. Jay-Z can make the statement that, because he is corporate now.
Right.
He can stop that. He can turn that around.
But at the same
I'm gonna
time,
try to
it's
do
gonna
this.
affect-
I'm
Can I
sorry, this
interject
sister
something?
right here. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Spoken word is the art form, okay? And if you look throughout the history of how spoken word has resonated throughout all communities, all cultures, okay? They just jazzed it up. We did it in Africa with the drum. That's how we did it. The Native Americans, they did it around the fire and things of this nature. Now what happened is every 20 years, generational shifts, okay? I'm from Chicago, okay?
Midwest.
Now, you know, I'm glad to hear that Gary's not number one anymore. However,
They're doing it per capita.
okay,
Chicago still is the
yeah,
best.
okay.
Yeah.
However, okay, at the age, I'm an 80s baby, okay? So, you know, we grew up with Teddy Pendergraphs, okay, Commodores and everything else. We had house parties in the basements, okay? And it became an art form for break dancers.
Right.
Those were the ones who couldn't necessarily get into the clubs. However, it was a form of expression. But
Right.
if you look back at many of the words that are spoken, from Nika Giovanni's to Sonia Sanchez, okay, to Sister Soldier,
Right.
and I'm gonna have to go ahead and say even Tupac at some point, okay? When the music stopped being the message and became commercialized, then they always seem to make sure that they demonize the woman by emasculating her, by calling her these things, H's and B's, because again, during that time, here comes an epidemic of crack, AIDS,
Right.
okay? And then, of course, you have the welfare system, where a lot of people was dependent upon that. It was a form of survival. It's just like if you have an individual play a basketball, you put a basketball in the kid's hand, and you say, look, this could be your future, okay? But then when I look back, and I look at Queen Latifah, MC Light, okay? Y'all remember them? Okay? Okay?
But I
All
think
right.
that, okay, I mean,
Because see, there's
sorry,
some things, there's some
he's
things,
next and then he's next.
there's some things that I just want to clear up, okay? You know, when you, an artist, can sell out your soul to make some millions of dollars, okay? You would do that. Because I know plenty of y'all would sell your soul for a winning lottery ticket right about now. Because I know I would, okay? I'm just being honest with myself, okay? Okay? All right? However, the conscious of the music and the message that it sends may not be the life that many of those artists are really rapping about. Okay? Because people thought Tupac grew up all hard. How you growing up hard taking 2 trains to performance art school?
Performing art school, right.
You would go with Jasmine Guy. Come on, really?
Right.
You know, but the story has gotten away from the message.
I think the narrative is still embedded. I think there's a strong story still within hip hop. I know that the commercialization, you know, the bling, whatever, has started to take it over, but I still think that we need to pay attention to the artistic ability of many of these individuals who are rapping or who are expressing themselves. I think that this is definitely an outlet. And so when we try to, when a lot of people say that's not hip hop anymore, and I'm like, well, no, hip hop is anything that allows you to sample, express, to move, to move beyond of status quo. I think that hip hop is what it is to you, it's not necessarily what it is to me, but it can be anything because it's samples, right? So I'm sorry, I'm still trying to get you in and trying to get Dr. Cunningham.
I was going to ask for you to take us on a walk of what hip hop is, or what it has been, and some of the tenets that make up hip hop. Because a lot of times people just think hip hop is just the music, where hip hop is just rap, and that hip hop is negative, where hip hop is commercial. But they fail to realize where it came from. As the sister was saying, you know, the drum beats, you know,
Right.
and
So you have
syncopation
the
of it.
African
So,
diaspora, you know, you have the, you know, before the 70s, I mean, the Black Arts Movement, you know, you have so much. I mean, the main tenets of hip hop were MC and DJing. You guys know what MCing is? It's rapping, speaking, DJing on turntables. You have graffiti arts, and you have b-boying, which is the dance, right? Then lastly, you got what some people say knowledge. But then some people move beyond that and say, no, hip hop is spoken word now. It's the way you dress. It's entrepreneurship. You know, KRS-One starts going into this whole conversation about hip hop is all of these things. And so this is my chair, actually, so he's going to push me back and try to make me expand. But I always say that it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what hip hop is because it can be anything. And as soon as I try to put it in one little box, that's when somebody else says, no, that's not hip hop to me. You know? So to me, there are some foundational tenets of hip hop, which is what I just said. But it goes beyond that because now I'm writing about how hip hop is an understanding, an epistemological knowing of a way of being. It's a way that I move, a way that I speak, the way I move my hands. It's a swagger. Some people say that President Obama is hip hop culture, right? That he's right on the cusp of that. This guy, he wrote a dissertation. He said hip hop is not dead, it's sitting in the White House. Right? So hip hop is this relatability. I'm able to relate to you. I'm able to relate to him right here. I'm able to relate to anybody just off of the way that I am able. It's a relatability to me, a community-oriented thing. But that's for me. Some people may not believe that. Brother Martin and Amina.
I just want to say, I think the biggest problem with hip hop is a lot of misinterpretation, which is what Jay-Z talks about in Decoded. I mean, like the song 99 Problems. People immediately thought when he said 99 Problems and a bitch ain't one, he was talking about a woman, he's talking about a dog, talking about the canine unit. But see, people misinterpret that because we're so readily and quick to denigrate hip hop because of what we perceive it to be and some of our own perceptions of hip hop.
Right.
But the people who haven't really even listened to it heard a little bit here, heard a little bit there, and then decided, you know, oh, that this is a problem, this is bad. And you know, and I think again, like I say, that's the biggest problem with it is a lot of misinterpretation. I think some of it is generational, and then people may not agree. I mean, people may not agree with that. I come from I don't know, listening to it, and coming from Dallas here, right up and listening to it and whatever else, and I know what it did for me. I was able to put the more negative stuff about women to the side. I know some kids may not be able to, but my homeboys and I, we come up, most of us were raised by our mothers. We knew better than that. We knew women wasn't bitches. We knew that. I mean, we knew that. And we were able to put that to the side. We were less interested in that. I also think, too, that a lot of the problem with hip-hop is that people, like you said, kind of put it in this box that hip-hop, what happened to the message? Hip-hop was never just social messages.
It's about fun.
It was fun. It was rappers' delight. It has no message whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but it was like party music. It was fun. And then you would have white lines on the side. You know, on the other end of it. So it's always had the spectrum. Right. Hip hop is always.
It was all right, and I agree with that. I was gonna say he does talk about this in the book. He talks about like, okay, the whole, he talks about Oprah Winfrey, right, and how she's against the N-word, and how they had to find a meeting. They had a meeting and they talked about a book that they both read, and they were like, wait a minute, it's not that much difference between you and I. While you do use the N-word, and she still doesn't agree with it, he said they'd have to leave the room and say, I agree to disagree. You know, I agree to disagree with you. He said, well, it's me taking power back. She says, well, no, do you know where my people come from? Do you know they use that word? You know, it was an oppressive word. He said it's no longer oppressive to him, right? But I feel like he may not feel that way 5 years from now. I feel like that's why I say hip hop has aged. It has grown up, and a lot of people are still looking at the youth culture saying hip hop is a youth culture. No, you got, honestly, it's one of a sister was here just earlier. She said her dad is 64, walking around singing "I Do, I Do, I Do" by Young Jeezy and Jay-Z and Andre 3000. You know, and this song is about how, they want to get married now. But 10 years ago or 5 years ago, Andre 3000 said, don't jump over the broom too soon. Don't do it. I don't want to do this. And so now there has become this growth within it. And I think people are not looking at that. What happens when hip hop does grow up, get a job, get educated, get educated, go to college? What happens? It changes, it shifts. And so the youth that I once was, I'm no longer. What did Paul say? When I was a child, I felt like a child. Now I'm an adult, I'm changing, I'm shifting, I want to do stuff for my community.
Okay. So I was kind of gonna piggyback on what he said, but my form of music is Christian or gospel. So I'm kind of the type of person that'll hear the lyrics and like, oh my goodness, that's so.
Anti-Christ.
Yes. I'm not like. Yes. No, not sacrilegious, but it's like, oh, it's so degrading, it's offensive, blah blah blah. So this weekend I was with my nephew and he's 14 and he loves music, but he's also an introvert. So like every song that comes on, he can know all the lyrics to the song. I'm like, how do you know this? Like, I mean, how are you doing in school? It's like, why are you so focused on music? And what I thought about the stuff that I've talked about with Alexis is like, that's his voice. So even though, so what I challenged him is like, well, when he's like, oh, I like this, da da da. I was like, I was like, well, what do you want to do when you go to college? And he was saying whatever. I was like, have you ever thought about music since you love it? He was like, what would I do with it? I was like, be a producer, not a rapper. And he was like, that's where the money is. And he was like, well, like, I challenge you to sit down and write down some of your thoughts. I was like, it can be a song, it can be a rap, it can be whatever. But it's taking hip hop as we see it as a negative connotation and turning it into a positive. Because for him, a person who's not vocal, that is his voice. So that's all.
I mean, I say about, I'm going to try to get some more questions. I'm going to try to put you in, but I
promised myself I was gonna be quiet.
no, I mean, we're not trying to, we've got hours.
I mean, I understand, but the thing is that when a rapper raps, they use words. Words or use a form of expression, okay? And no matter how much it changes, no matter what it is, it's still, they call it hip hop because that's what they say, it's hip and it's hot. However, it's still spoken word. It's an art form, a way of communicating artistically. Okay, and hip hop hasn't grown up. People who used to do hip hop has grown up. It's just like when Richard Pryor went to Africa. He used to say nigga all the time. He came back. He said, I ain't gonna say that no more. It's because he grew up. But the form and how people relate to the culture, the hip hop culture, that's a whole different ideology than the spoken word art form. The culture has been very demeaning and irresponsible, and we have to own it. We have to own it.
Portions of it. I think the thing is,
That's true.
I want to jump in and help you out, sis. It's your session. I'm your chair at Texas State University, so I'm trying to make sure that you flow and do your thing because I know you know what you're talking about. I heard you and I write and I read what you wrote. So I want to make sure that you capture and bring us to where you are. All right, so the thing with hip hop, the way I've heard you express it and even start out today, it's not to be put in a box. But there are things that you can attach to it. When we try to put it in a box, when we take ownership of it, then we turn to the adultism, where we begin to look at, well, this is not that, this is not that. It should fit into here. And if we look back at music as a whole, I think each generation can say that their parents told them that the music they were listening to wasn't real music, or that they shouldn't listen to that. And I think that goes back. So now hip hop as an art form and as a music form is now in that same vein. And then additionally, when we look at the commercialization of it, we demonize it, but at the same time, we turn education to commercialism. We tell our kids, you go to school, you do well in school, you go to college for what? What's the end of that? To get a good job. And so that's the line that I've heard. So it's like
Hustle real hard.
So if it's about you do what you do to provide a livelihood for yourself, but then we see our young people and the artists that become older and continue to do this, it's like, well, we put another layer of responsibility on that doesn't fall in line with all the other areas of commercialization and business. And so we try and make hip hop into this thing where it's this purist, but it's not. It has several layers. There are still artists who are with the message. There are still artists who are socially conscious. There are still artists who are just all about the craft and the music and the beats. There are still artists who, I'm thinking of the Last Poets. You can go back that far. You can even talk about Millie Jackson and her end of her song where she does her little riff part. That's still a part of this hip hop building. Right. And so we try to capture hip hop and say this is what it is. Then we become the same people who we tried not to be when we were growing up.
Right.
And so for you to remain strong and you push back on me as your chair, Dr. Oliver, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I have to step back and say, I'm calling you out. In hip hop. So I just want to put you back in your space.
My space to me, like when I say that I am hip hop, right? I'm hip hop. I embody it. I embody the music. I embody the way people dress, the way people act, the way people, you know. But the thing about that is that even when even when Jay-Z begins to talk about 30's the new 20, he's saying, I used to do this and now I don't do this. I used to let my pants sag, now my pants don't sag. I used to have a low credit score, now I got a high credit score, right? And so in that, he's talking about his growth. That's why I say hip-hop grew up, because it's not going to be the same that it was in 77 or 76. It's 2012.
At the cover of Decoded too, there's this tremendous sense of materialism that's being now kind of flooded through Jay-Z and Kanye's music now, particularly Watch the Throne, right? So could you, and like I said, even that Rorschach print, which is like gold, and even the cover of Watch the Throne, which is this kind of embroidered kind of gold. Beautiful. It is. But I mean, and then even in the lyrics, lyrics-wise, they talk about these watches that cost tens of thousands of dollars and all this other stuff, and Louis Vuitton boat shoes and stuff like that. And you got these young cats who have no money, who have no job, no job, no sense, trying to struggle, trying to achieve that type of materialism, So on one hand, when we talk about it in terms of being denigrating, in terms of like, demeaning in terms of women, stuff like that, can you speak to like how maybe that materialism and that kind of pushing of excess in itself, that kind of severe capitalism almost, how is that affecting the community as well?
I mean, it's capitalism at its finest. If you think about, where our parents came from, right? Not having probably nothing. Even my grandparents, we lived in this street called Church Road in like kind of a shack. I mean, my grandmother, she passed away from having a mold. From black mold. That's how she ended up, getting sick. So if you think about where we came from, if somebody gives you $1 million, you're probably going to go buy the biggest thing. I mean, because of capitalism is pushing on you, like go buy these Nike shoes. There's this guy named Macklemore, this rapper, who talks about commercialism, and he talks about, Jordans, and how everybody had on some Jordans, and he just wanted some Jordans too, and how everybody's kind of bound by this, right? But this is not only in hip-hop culture. So let us be clear. This is also in my grandmother saying, I'm going to go buy this $15,000 mink coat, or, coming from nothing and saying, I look like something once I put this on. All of it's a cover-up. All of it is keeping up with the Joneses, right? But hip-hop is able to be its own, hip-hop has made more money for popular culture than any other art form. So in that, you're going to see the bling bling, the all this, the money that, pimps up, hoes down, excuse my language. But you're going to see all that because that is what they're putting on the forefront of it. You and then you.
But it's not even that. It's wearing your insecurities on your back. It's pretty much at the end of the day, that's what it is. If you ever read Tom Burrell's book Brainwashed, he talks about all of that and wearing your insecurities on the back. Same thing when you hear Baby's lyrics. Baby says, well, I got this Bugatti, and I got this, and I got that. It's saying, look what I got, this is what you don't have, and I'm wearing my insecurities. That's okay. And there are other artists, like you said, like, if you listen to XM Radio, there are artists that just wear Pumas and Adidas, and they're not really materialistic. You listen to Quality's lyrics.
Yeah, Lupe, but even Lupe now, he's kind of going on the commercial route, you could say. So, I mean, it's always going to be.
It's all about your insecurities as opposed to just, it's commercialism, but it's also your insecurities.
Yeah, but this notion of materialism is revolutionary, though, because this is what is happening. I just read an article recently where there's this notion, the idea that the new revolution, so to speak, these new revolutionaries, Jay-Z, Kanye, you become revolutionary because you can buy anything that you want.
Right.
So what is that suggesting, though, to a culture who cannot do that yet? These young kids, me listening to, who can't do that shit. Right, I ain't here, don't mean, me too, I can't do that shit. But still going like, I want them shoes like Usher guy, whatever,
So how do we,
so you want to be swagged out. I'm sorry.
No, it's not so much that it's placed.
the reason I was going to start there is because I was just listening to my Pandora, James Brown radio, and Otis Redding came on, Tramp. and she just dogging him out. You wear bro games, this and that, bro games. He said, oh, I love her. And then you go off, I got a gold Cadillac, I got 2 Lakers, I got this, that, and the other.
I'm not trying to put it off on hip hop. The thing is that it is pronounced in people, and like I said, I only mentioned Jay-Z and Kanye. It is pronounced in those guys, and they right now represent, you know, a large part of hip hop that people know.
Right.
They represent that, and so again, this notion again of revolutionary. Because look, hey, hanging out with Obama, that's part of that being able. Money has made that possible for them to be able to do that.
Right.
You know, we can't separate that out. That like I said, right. Revolutionary as
Y'all should be afraid of
capitalism.
what I'm gonna do next. I mean, you know, this is on to the next one. Yes.
So that's what I was gonna say, in that I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, that's when I first got introduced to hip hop, and I don't remember who the artists are, but there was the big old bling, and it was all over the place, and that's when I kind of think it started. I don't think it's any worse now than it was back then. But the message that kind of came through that music was, I didn't get this by going to college and being a doctor. I got this by selling drugs on the corner. That's how I got all my money. And it was not a good message. I mean, forget the materialism and all of that stuff. It's how you get all that money. And then secondary, what you choose to spend that money on.
Well, everybody wasn't saying they got it from selling drugs.
They didn't really say it, but they weren't talking about it was implied.
I mean, I don't think it all was a, but that was the prevailing message.
That was part of the, that was part of, I mean,
That was a radio.
if you talk about selling drugs and stuff like that, that wasn't part of the community. And it was, they say capitalism, it was the industry of drugs, like who brought the drugs to the community, like to push the community to sell drugs. Right? It wasn't like, I just want to sell drugs because I want to sell drugs. So that for me was the only industry available. Right.
And we ain't got no lights back down.
The industry, now is like all the violence, it's commercial. They're commercializing violence. When they talk about gangster rap, they say all the gangster rap, before it was they were talking about the violence in the community. It was all the trying to explain everybody how big the violence was in the community, and then someone say, well, there's some people there that doesn't live in this community, they live in the rich areas, they want to listen about those stories, and they commercialize that. So they start selling for them, for those people who doesn't live in the community, right? So like for example in Mexico, that's something they call corridos, right? Like corridos a long time ago, they were talking about narco traffickers, and it was just putting like a picture like those guys who were, trying to survive, selling drugs, giving money to the community. And then now it's commercialized. Now corridos, everybody talk about corridos in Mexico, narco traffickers, as a like a heroes, because the industry say this sale. It's all. It's really about like nothing related to rap or hip hop. It's something different in the community.
Right. I just want to make a point to say again, and I'll let you go, that we're going way beyond just the rap form of hip hop. Even in the book of Decoded, in Decoded, and furthermore, Common just came out with a book recently. I can't remember, Mark, do you know the name of Common's book? I'm trying to think of it right now. I just read it. Yeah, Common Sense the Rapper. I can't think of it, but I loved it. I love the book. I read it in a couple of, in less than a day. But he's talking about hip hop culture as well. So a lot of people are trying to get their story out, their narrative out, right? This is but they're saying I embody hip hop. And so I don't want to just focus on the rap music, because to say Jay-Z is just rap music, that's like, wait a minute. He's over there in the royal, in England, having dinner, tea with the queen. Wait a minute, wait a minute now. Wait a minute, it's more than just rap music. And the queen saying, I listened to your song. Like, girl, you didn't listen to that song.
I came into this discussion not really knowing very much about rap, but being fascinated by it as an art form and just the technical and artistic craft of it all. But it's very interesting that you say that it started from oppression, which many art forms, that's the motivation. Out of discomfort, out of pain becomes this beautiful. And it's a spiritual thing, I believe.
Good, I'm glad you're going there, because I wanted to try to
Well,
go
I'm
to
a
that.
dancer.
Good.
So, I notice when I dance, it's another voice for me.
Good,
So
yeah.
I can make that relationship, but it's just kind of ironic to hear that this craft that you're talking about comes from the oppression, from the main culture, and
Yeah.
now it's kind of come full circle and almost in a way I could verbalize sell out to go back, you know, and now embody all of those things that you were rebelling from. Those people with all of the riches and everything,
Yeah.
you know, for them not to, and I'm not judging it, I'm just
Yeah.
observing.
Yeah.
Because people don't know what they don't know, and I feel like.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
It can be bliss. But you know, I was thinking about something this guy was talking about. He was talking about he's a hip hop historian, and he was talking about the way people walked in the 30s and in the 40s and in the 50s, right? And now you'll see the hip hop culture walking a little different, right? But in that, it's a movement, it's a freedom. It's almost like they're freer. So now I'm walking like this. I don't have all that on my shoulders anymore. But the interesting thing is, yes, it still is kind of on your shoulders, but you don't see it, right? We still are kind of wearing that mask. But in that, I think that there is a spirituality component to hip hop that's often never talked about, and that's what I talk about in my work. What is the spiritual components of hip hop? There's an interconnectedness to hip hop that a lot of people don't even talk about, right? If you believe that, like I do a lot with, as Amina said, I do a lot with Christianity, gospel rap. That's my whole genre. And so even to talk about Jay-Z, sometimes I'm like, I used to love Jay-Z, but now I don't even halfway agree with some of the stuff he says. Like, seriously? But I have to recognize that he provided me a landscape.
Just like jazz came out of the spiritual which came from the slave, you know.
The slave narrative.
The pain of the slave narrative.
Right. I mean, it's all combined. I can't not talk about slavery and not. It's like and say that didn't have an impact on me. All of these things had an impact. So even the bad and the good had an impact on me and caused me to be who I am today. Yes, ma'am.
The book is One Day It'll All Make Sense.
One day it'll all make sense, right? You guys have to try to get that book if you can. It is not as, you know, he's not using the B word and stuff. His mom's in the book, so she's like, you know, he ain't using all that words. But
Alexis, from a spiritual standpoint, though, how do you deal with, though, in your dissertation, or in your work, rather, your research, how do you deal with, though, a culture of brothers who have publicly stated, you know, that they have trouble believing there's a God because of what they've seen on the streets, because of the poverty they've seen, because of, you know, the deaths they've seen, because of the drug culture. How do you deal with that?
how do I spiritualize hip hop? Well,
No, I mean, how do you deal with that, though? How do you deal with that component of hip hop, of brothers, like I say, who have, like I say, expressed that they don't have a belief in God because of what they've seen on the streets? How do you
well, I
deal
mean,
with
I have
that?
the same story, right? I mean, I moved out here to, I moved out here to get a PhD. Someone came with me. She lost her husband 2 years prior, and then the week before I moved here, her boyfriend was murdered, so she came with me. So I come from something where it's like, okay, I have so much faith in God, and here's this woman who's from hip hop culture, right? Same age as me, and you know, I was struggling with it, like, oh, girl, I can't believe you lost two, you know, and to the streets of East St. Louis. And she said, but it's still a God. She said, but I still have faith, you know. So I'm like, and so what we're seeing in the literature about when you start talking about God and you know, hip hop or spirituality in hip hop, they're saying that specifically people of color, that you cannot forget about the soul. It's embedded and weaved in everything that we do. There is something you could say, oh, I don't believe in God, but there's something that's that's pushing you forward. And while there is that tension that I've gone through too, like, God, well, why would this stuff happen? And then I'm trying to make a cause for hip hop, but then hip hop, sometimes, you know, it's like talking about Trayvon Martin, right? We're killing Trayvons every day in the street. Sometimes I think about that in Chicago, you know, I mean, in East St. Louis, you know, I mean, wait a minute, so much stuff is happening, so how can I spiritualize something that to me sometimes is demonic? Sometimes I feel like that, but then I'm like, I also feel like there's so many layers to everything, and you can't forget about the multi-dimension of it, you know? And so I may not even ever be able to answer that. Dr. Oliver tell me, Alexis, spirituality and hip-hop is not really making sense to me right now. I'm like, well, I'm trying to get it to make sense, so let me study it a little longer, so maybe if I come back in a year, I'll know it like.
Can I give you just a parallel? Okay, music, pain, happiness, everything is emotion. Okay, and when you're saying hip hop is a spiritual.
There's a spirituality component of hip hop.
All right, but spirituality is what, to me, is how you relate to the stories that are being told, be it true or be it false. Okay, and when you get that one song that enlightens you, that creates a change, that manifests a change. That is your relationship to your hip hop. Okay, so when I look at things that you have been describing, and I'm hearing the ladies in the back, they talked about the blues. Lady sings the blues. The first time she ever saw a man hung on the tree. Y'all remember
I was
that
gonna
song?
talk about
Okay,
ladies
you
singing
know,
blues. I didn't want to get far out.
and ragtime, and even in religion and everything else, there is a movement in spoken word. I'm sorry, I'm an English major, y'all, but there's a movement in spoken word, in hip hop, in its rarest form or his latest form or whatever, happens to be
From the spoken word.
from the spoken word, which is spirituality. So,
Right. Well, even if you go back to the black, church, right, the way that when the pastor got up there and was freestyling, right, and God said, stepped on this, and da da da, right, and there was this movement, right, and then somebody was like, yeah, amen, praise the Lord or whatever. You had that call and response. You see that in hip hop every day, right? I'm listening to when you guys came in, I was playing this song called Somehow Some Way, and Jay-Z's saying, whether I dribble out this, he curses, whether I dribble out this place, whether I work second floor hospitals out this. What he's saying is like, whatever I gotta do, I'm gonna get up out the hood. And then he says, look, Mom, a tree grew in Brooklyn. I took that and I said, look, Mom, a tree grew out of East St. Louis. Look where I'm at. I felt that thing. Like I care. That's like a motivation to me. Look where I came from. I came from nothing to something. You know, and so in that, there's this thing where you start, like DMX, I don't know if you guys know who DMX is, but it's something emotional that happens to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel you on that, even though the brother could be crazy sometimes, right? Barking his stuff. You're like, get at me, dog, you're crazy. But when he gets up there and starts praying and saying, Lord, please guide me through this day and all this stuff, it's something that you feel in the heart of your heart with hip hop. And so I cannot not spiritualize it when to me spirituality is woven within that because we are a people of soul. I'm a person of soul. I come from soul. You know, I can't. I went to this church, Promised Land, the other day, and this guy gets up there, this white man, and he was talking about how all musical forms came from black people, and he said I just want to make it clear, all musical forms, the Grand Ole Opry, everything came from black people. He started, I mean, this man was bad. He started getting like the historical component. I'm like, I didn't know that, you know. but it made me. It was something to be proud of right there. So when I I'm hearing you guys loud because you guys are sorry. Oh, well, anyway, go ahead. Oh, we gotta wrap it up. Well, what are these for free? Start throwing them out here. Wherever my book is, let me know. Okay, so these are $20. You guys, I wish we had 3 or 4 hours because we could sit up here and have a real deep conversation about hip hop. The thing I want to say, I want to just stand here in proxy of hip hop and say it helped to save my life. It got me where I am today. God was the head of that, but hip hop was a vehicle. And so we cannot forget about the power and the strength in that. And so if you have sons and daughters and cousins and nieces and whatever, even uncles, even your granddaddy, he over there rapping something, you know, just try to see deeper than what it is, and try to relate to it. And matter of fact, you may want to throw on a CD or something, or go on YouTube and check it out. And so she said, no.
I can't understand what they're saying. I'm sorry. I hear slow. Wait a minute.
The new kids.
I'm from Texas. I hear slow. Okay.
I